what's up guys, it's Lucas and welcome back to my channel. If you haven't subscribed, please just dig deep and grit your teeth and scroll down and click the subscribe button. It's right there and it really helps me out. So today we're going to check out this guitar. So this is a Squier Strat. This is one of the Japanese made Squier Strats. I'll have to check to be sure about the year, but I think maybe late 80s, early 90s, something like that. It's a really cool guitar. This guitar was brought to me by my good buddy William, who you may have seen I did a previous video on an ESP Maverick where I did some setup work and some modifications and changed the pickups and everything on that guitar. But he brought me this guitar because it also needs some love. And I thought, man, what a great opportunity to give you what I think are all of the tools and tips that you need to get a Strat to work at its maximum capacity. So the Strat in itself is like the ultimate modding platform because you can just do anything with these guitars. You can change the necks, you can change the pickups and the pickguard and the tuners and all kinds of, I mean, you can do a lot of that stuff with other guitars, but it's just so easy to do with Strats. And on top of that, it's just a really good design. Like, Leo just knocked it out of the park in 1954, and there really hasn't been that many changes made to the guitar. But this guitar needs a few things. It needs a good setup, and we're going to get the tremolo to work and stay in tune. It needs some electronic stuff. We're going to put some new pickups in the guitar, and either rewire the pots that are in there. I'm going to have to look at them, but they may also need to be replaced. Neither of the tone pots seem to be doing anything, and the switch is a little bit weird in the in-between positions. So we're going to do all of that stuff to this guitar, and I'm going to take you through step by step how you do all of the little tweaks and little pro tips to get the Strat to be what it should be, in my mind. We're going to take the guitar apart, which is why I've got my little workbench over here, and I'm going to basically take it all the way down to nothing and then build it back up, and I'm going to show you how I do everything, every step in between, and then we will see what it sounds like in the end. So let's move over to the workbench. So when you're doing a setup or any kind of guitar work, the first thing you want to do is have a nice clean space in which to work. We've got our Strat here. So the first thing we're going to do is, of course, take the strings off so that we can disassemble the guitar. And for that you need a very special tool. It's the D'Addario Planet Waves Pro Winder. So go ahead and take our strings off. I will probably speed this part up. Here's another little pro tip for you kind of like first timers with this sort of stuff. When you take off a set of strings, you can kind of, put them together like this. You're gonna throw them away. Take all the ends so that the ends that were on the tuner are all up here, so you got all your kind of like little curvy pointy stuff. Put them all together and then kind of put that in the back of your hand, and then you can just kind of wind the strings into a little circle like this. You just go over and under, and that just makes this really easy to throw away. Alright, so now we've got the guitar in a condition that we can kind of start taking it apart. I'm going to flip the guitar over. As you can see, this one has the 70s style 3-bolt neck. Really doesn't make that much difference. I have here is a power drill with a screwdriver bit in the end of it. And that just makes this go faster, but you could do this with a regular screwdriver. By the way, as you're taking the guitar apart, it's a really good idea to keep parts that go together. So keep your neck plate and your neck bolts together. So now we should be able to just pull this neck right out. We're going to set the neck off to the side for a minute because there's not a whole lot of disassembly to be done on the neck. Alright, and there's our back plate. And you can see the nice inner workings of the guitar here. Alright, so now we're going to take the tremolo off. Okay, so now we've got all 6 of our trim screws out, and this tremolo will come right up out of the body, just like that. So now the next step is going to be pickguard and electronics. What we're going to be able to do is pull this up, and there's going to be one wire that's still attached kind of to the body, and that's the ground wire that goes through the body and connects to the tremolo claw. So you'll see, and this is screwed, I think so. Yeah, there we go. When I pull this up, there's our jack wires, and this right here, this is our bridge ground. So that's connected to the trim claw on the back. again, because we're going to rewire this, I'm going to go ahead and clip it. And now you're left with what is essentially the bare bones of the Stratocaster. So you can see it's a little bit dirty, just from, this is mostly just kind of production type stuff. So we're going to clean the guitar before we do anything else, because we've got it all apart and it's real easy to do that now. Okay, so I've just got this nice kind of terry cloth, I don't know what you want to call it. It's real soft, kind of, doesn't have little microfiber bits on it. It's just super smooth, soft cloth, and just some regular rubbing alcohol. And that just helps break up dirt and gunk and stuff. So we're just gonna pour a little bit on the cloth, don't need very much, and kind of just clean it off. So there we go. Now we've got a nice, clean Strat body with which to work when we start putting this stuff back together. Next thing we're gonna do is go ahead and get the electronics section wired up. Okay, now like I said before, since we're basically going to rewire and kind of build this guitar from the ground up, I'm gonna be a little bit more liberal with how I kind of take the stuff apart, since I'm gonna redo it all anyway. So, as you can see, there's the back of the pick guard. See, everything's all wired up. Instead of going through and desoldering all these things, there's not really any reason to do that, so I'm just going to take my diagonal wire cutters and just go through and clip stuff. Handy dandy drill with the screwdriver bit. So we put all our screws and springs over there. There's our pickups. Let's get some paint tape, just blue low tack paint tape. B for bridge, M for middle, and N for neck. So the next thing we need to do is take off our knobs. To do that, I've got another little special tool. You can do this without this tool, but it does make it easier. I'll leave a link in the description for this as well. It's just a little knob puller tool. Okay, so we've got our knobs off. Now we can kind of take this whole electronic section out. So here's kind of the old harness. Okay, so now we've got our pots and our switch mounted in. Alright, so now that we've got everything all grounded, now we can start putting in some of the other connections. So we've got a couple of things here. We've got an orange drop cap. This is a .47, which I think sounds better for single coil guitars. And then we've also got a little treble bleed, which I've sort of pre-made here. We're going to go from this far right lug here, if you're looking at the pot straight on, and it's going to go through that lug and then connect to the back of the casing of the pot. I'm going to try and keep this as low profile as you can, because remember, this has got to go inside the body, so you don't want it standing up super proud or anything. Alright, so now we can go ahead and start wiring our pots to the switch. Generally with Strats, especially the traditional ones, this middle pot here would be your tone for your neck pickup, and this pot here would be your tone for your middle pickup, and the bridge pickup is not connected to the tone controls. However, I think the bridge pickup is the one that needs the tone control the most, so we're going to connect the bridge pickup to the tone control. But another thing I like to do is disconnect the middle from the tone control so that it has a little bit less of a load on it, and what that ends up doing is brightening up the 2 and 4 positions. I'm going to get the pickups and mount them in the pick guard, and then we'll wire those up. Okay, so now we've got our pick guard all wired up here. As you can see, I've used some zip ties in a couple of places to keep the wires going in the direction of the routing in the body, so that it'll sit in there nice and easy. So the only thing we have left to do wiring-wise is this, which is the jack, and then we've got to attach the ground from the trim claw to the back of this volume pot. So we're going to need the body for that. So let's get the body and put the pick guard back on it. Let's clean the workspace, and then we'll move on to the setup portion. Next thing we're going to do is reattach the bridge. So you remember the bridge that we took off earlier? Everything's nice and clean on this now. There's just gonna set it back down where it goes. And here's kind of trick one of the Lucas's Strat setup guide. When you have a 6-hole trim like this, and it's one of the old style ones that doesn't have like a knife edge or something like that, what I like to do is basically let it ride on the outside 2 screws. So before I put in the middle 4 screws, I'm gonna get it to be pivoting on these 2, and then I'll put the middle 4 in, not down quite as far, so that it's really just pivoting, and you're basically creating a 2-point tremolo, so it's less friction spots that can happen. So that's step 1 of getting this to work really, really smoothly. So the next thing we're gonna do, hold this down, flip the guitar over, we're gonna put our springs back in. So now, usually, this is where I would put, in normal Strats, I would put a shim right here, because I feel like almost all guitars like this need a little bit of a shim to kind of get a slightly better action on the higher frets, and also because it's going to allow you to raise the saddles, and raising the saddles will give you a stronger break angle, and it just kind of makes the guitar sound better, I think. Usually, I would use a pick here, like a very thin pick, or the back end of a very thin pick, kind of right here in the pocket, and that would allow me to kind of raise the back end of the neck up just a little bit, get a better neck angle. But since this has a micro tilt, that's kind of built in, and I don't have to do that. You can adjust this more once the neck is on there if you need to, one way or the other, but I try to just get it in the ballpark to start. So now that we got that adjusted, the next thing to do is put our neck back on the guitar. So now we're getting to the kind of setup stage here. So the next thing we're going to do is put the strings back on the guitar, because we need the strings to do all these other things. Okay, so now I've got all the strings pulled through. So now I can individually go through one at a time and string up the guitar. Okay, so stringing tips. The trick is to make sure that you don't get your windings all bird's nest looking. Some people do a little wrap and lock thing, that works too, but I don't really like doing that, just because then when I have to take the strings off, I think it's a pain in the butt. So we'll run our string through. That, make sure it's fully seated in the back of the block. And then with the 6 in line like this, I like to go 2 tuners up. Like that, so like I pulled it completely taut, and then I grab it 2 tuners up. And then from there, I slide back, and that's where I kink the string. And usually with a set of 10s like this will do it. Bigger strings require less, because they take up more space on the winding. And then we're just going to wind the string around. I'm kind of keeping some tension on it so that I can keep it nice and neat. We're winding down the post. All right, so this is what you're going to be left with. Hopefully you can see that. So it's a nice, it's got basically 2.5 wraps on it. And there's no overlapping. We wound down the post, so we get a nice string tension in the nut, so it won't pop out. Okay, so now that we've got our strings back on our guitar and basically in tune, you know, more or less, next thing we want to do is go ahead and clip the string ends off. Now, we're going to use the remaining kind of leftover string for some nut stuff in a second, so don't throw these away. So now what we want to do is just raise these saddles a little bit, and I'm going to try and follow the radius of the fingerboard. Alright, so I think I got the guitar playing pretty nice. So now we're going to check out our bridge here. So we've got a little wobble going on, which is what we want a little bit of float. So we've got about a whole step on the low string. And that's about where I like it, actually. So the next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and set our intonation. Okay, so to check the intonation, what you want to do is tune the guitar up, and I like to hold the guitar in the playing position rather than having it sit on the bench or have the neck on the rest, because that kind of alters the pressure and the tension on the neck. So in the playing position, tune the guitar how you want it. Okay, so then you want to play the harmonic on one string at a time at the 12th fret. Make sure that's in tune. So D sharp. All right, and then play the fretted note of the 12th fret. So if the note is flat, that means you need to move the saddle towards the headstock. And if the note is sharp, that means you need to move the saddle away from the headstock. So that's pretty much it. It's just a small adjustment thing. So you just check and make sure. My tuner went off. Here we go. So we're in tune. Okay, that's actually just a little bit sharp. Okay, it's just as easy as that to adjust the intonation, so it's really not a big deal, nothing you should be afraid of. All right, so we've got our neck relief, we've got our intonation adjusted. The only thing really left to do is make sure that the tremolo is staying in tune. So before we can do that, we gotta make sure these strings are good and stretched, because that can kind of throw it off. So I kind of like just kind of tug on them a little bit. Don't be too hard, you will break the string, just easy. This is gonna pull the guitar out of tune. Just getting all the stretch, all the weird spots out of the strings, make sure they're good and seated. Yeah, we're good and out of tune now. Now, the reason that I had you save those strings, or the ends of the strings, is for this next part. So what we're gonna do, let me tilt this up a little bit here, is we're gonna check and see how easily the string passes through the nut. So I'm gonna pull out just this low string. I'm gonna get this leftover piece of our low string and just slide it through. And that slides through, no catches, no bumps, nothing like that. So that's good, that means that nut slot is cut correctly. I'll just go on and do the same thing with the A string here. Yeah, okay, so those are all sliding really nice. But what you don't want is if you go to pass through one of those strings or into the strings through here and you hear like a scraping sound or some clicking or pinging or something like that, that means that the nut slots are not cut correctly, either not deep or wide or a combination of the both. So you want to make sure that you have those cut correctly. If that is the case, if you don't have nut files, which can be a little expensive, what you can do is take the string that you're going to cut for. So let's say we're going to do the low E string. So you would take this leftover low E string and then take a small piece of like 600 or 800 grit sandpaper, wrap it around the string like that so that it's just kind of mimicking the shape of the string, and then just once or twice just kind of pass through there with it like that, and then check it again, and then if it's still doing it, just once or twice. I mean, just go a little bit at a time, and then once it stops making the noise, then you need to stop and kind of go through and just polish it up a little bit. You can use like some dental floss to get in there and polish it. Okay, so now that we know that's working, now we're just going to do a little bit of lubrication to make sure everything's staying in tune. In this case, I'm going to use this StewMac guitar grease stuff. I think this works pretty well. But you just want to put this in anywhere where there's going to be string contact points like that. So I'm just using a little screwdriver. It's got a tiny head on it. I'm just going to put some of this right in the nut there. I'll put the string back down on it. And just go through and do that for every string. So now what I'm doing is I've just put it all in the nut there. And I'm just going up and down with the bar. Make sure it's good and then in the nut. That is staying in tune pretty good. So the other thing I'm going to do is this guitar has 2 string trees on it, and that's another place of friction. So what I like to do is put a little of this stuff up underneath the string trees as well. Alright, so I've got William's guitar all put back together, and I had to take the pick guard off and put those screws back in because I accidentally loosened it too much. But we're all set up and ready to go now, so I thought you might just want to hear a little bit of what it sounds like, so I'll just play a couple of different things and cut up some of the cooler sections.